Like I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say, but she never got back to me, but she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well. And that's what really concerned a lot of people, is like, if she's not getting back to her, like, if she doesn't get back to me, that's fine, like, she gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nichol called me when she was at the door, and that's when I came home. The most important thing, like, I'm not sure, I'll just wait for you to ask a question, but like, I want them wherever they're at. Like, I have no inclination of where they're at right now. Like, I've exhausted like every friend that I know of, and every friend that I have has called friends that Shanann has that maybe I didn't know about, and it's just like it's vanished. Like, she's not, like, when I got home yesterday, it was like a ghost town. Like, she wasn't here, kids weren't here. I have no idea like where they went.
Something strange was happening behind the walls of Dodge Correctional Institution. Not loudly, not publicly, but often enough to raise alarms. The first people to notice weren't inmates. It was staff, unscheduled guests, unexplained access, always wearing dark, plain clothing, always requesting the same prisoner, Celeste Watts. Here's where reality started to crack. These visitors didn't exist on paper. No entry logs, no visitor badges, no digital trail, yet they moved freely. Through security checkpoints, past metal detectors into restricted areas, they were escorted into private rooms. Doors were shut. No supervision, no witnesses. In prison, silence is temporary. Talk spread quickly. Some believed these people were tied to something powerful and hidden. Others suspected wealth, influence strong enough to bend rules. There were theories they wanted what only Watts still had. Unspoken details, unrecorded memories, versions of that night no one else had heard. And then, without warning, it stopped. Administration changed. Oversight tightened. Procedures were enforced. The mysterious visits ended overnight. No more undocumented access. No more closed sessions. No more faceless figures in dark clothes. Which leaves one unanswered question. Who had the authority to reach a man like Celeste Watts when no one else could? The public was never supposed to learn about this. But what's happening to Watts now is impossible to hide. Extreme isolation, 23 hours a day locked alone. A cell with no comfort, bare walls, steel fixtures, nothing soft, nothing warm. This isn't temporary. It's his life. And the effects are undeniable. People who once knew him say he's changed completely. Correctional officers document disturbing behavior. His letters reveal someone clinging desperately to routine, structure, anything that resembles connection. The methods he uses to feel human show a mind under pressure few endure. This isn't about forgiveness. It isn't about empathy. It's about observation, watching what happens when a person fully understands their punishment, its permanence, its finality, its inescapability. Celeste Watts understands where he is. He understands why he's there. He understands the door will never open for him again, and that understanding is slowly dismantling him, piece by piece.
What were you thinking this whole time? Like,
In the back of my head, I was just telling myself, what are you doing? Like, every time I could see pictures, like, of my wife and my kids, I'm just like, what am I doing? I didn't think. It seemed like it was like a blinder that was on my face.
oh,
And it was, like, every time I look back on it, like, like, I have pictures of my wife and kids and myself. And, like, every night, or every morning, every night, I just, talk to them, say, like I have, like, this book I used to read for CC, and I remember that book, so I read that to them, like, every night. And, like, there's some scripture and stuff that I read to them, so I just try to think back, like, I wish this never happened. I was just like, I wish that blinder wasn't on my head, wasn't in my eyes, that would have seen what was going on. Like, I was everybody said, oh, you're just out there having fun while your kids, or kids and wife are on vacation. I was like, no, it wasn't like that, but it seemed like that's what it looked like when, when you're going, you're going to camping, going to drag race, going all that other stuff that you...
Before we go further, let's pause. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, baby Nico. Their lives mattered. Their story matters. This isn't entertainment. This is about understanding how evil happens, how it lives with itself afterward, and what becomes of someone who crosses a line that can never be uncrossed. Type their names in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, because this story, this case, it stays with you. Parents feel it differently. You look at your own kids, and you cannot comprehend. You cannot understand how a father could do what he did. I'm an investigative journalist. I spend months on cases like this, digging where others won't, verifying details, chasing leads that go nowhere until suddenly they go somewhere. It's exhausting work. Your support, subscribing, sharing, leaving comments, that's what makes this possible. If there's a case you want investigated, leave it below. I promise you this, I'll pursue the truth with integrity. Now, let me take you inside a place most people never see. The bottom of the prison hierarchy, where Chris Watts exists every single day. August 2018, Colorado. A family vanishes. The husband stands before cameras, crying, pleading, begging for their safe return. Please, if anyone has seen them. His voice cracks, his hands shake. He looks terrified, heartbroken, desperate. Every word was a lie, because Chris Watts knew exactly where his family was. He put them there himself, his pregnant wife, his 2 daughters, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, gone. The world watched the truth unravel in real time. Confession, conviction, life sentences, 5 of them. No possibility of parole. Then the cameras stopped, the headlines faded, life moved on for everyone else. But what happened after that? This is where the story gets interesting. December 2018, shortly after conviction, Watts was transferred, not to another Colorado facility, more than 1,000 miles away, to Wisconsin, Dodge Correctional Institution. Why? Larry Levine, former prison consultant, explained it clearly. Watts was receiving threats, serious ones, death threats. In Colorado, everyone knew who he was. Inmates knew, guards knew, and according to Levine, even some correctional officers, the people assigned to protect him, couldn't tolerate his presence. Think about that for a second. When the guards can't stand you, when the people whose job is to keep you safe find you so repulsive they struggle to do their jobs, relocation becomes the only option, so they moved him far from Colorado, far from media attention, far from anyone who knew his face, to Dodge. The choice wasn't random. This place has history. Before becoming a prison, it was a psychiatric facility for the criminally insane. Ed Gein passed through these walls. His crimes inspired Psycho and The Silence of the Lambs. Stephen Avery, made famous by Making a Murderer, this is a place built to contain society's worst. And now Chris Watts is among them. But here's what nobody's really talking about. What was happening in Colorado that made officials decide they couldn't keep him safe anymore? Authorities won't say. They never do. But the transfer itself, that speaks volumes.
And there's times I wish, like maybe Shanann didn't have to go away for 5 weeks. Maybe we all just went for 1 week. Yeah. Nothing would ever happen. Yeah. It's only, 5 weeks alone, that's the only reason really that would even almost even allowed to happen.
There are quite a few people who would tell us, and who do tell us, you need to look into Nikki more, Nikki Kessinger. All the way from the extreme end of things being Nikki's the one who ordered the hit.
She was there. I'm in the basement.
She was there.
Yeah.
So the extreme is she's the one who told Chris to do it. She's the real problem. All the way, that's the extreme side, and then all the way to, well, there were these texts where she was infatuated, she was in love, she was saying how good Chris was in the sack, and maybe we should look at her more. What would you say to those people?
She had her moments where I had to talk her off a ledge kind of deal.
What does that mean?
It's I guess after the fact, there was videos of her that she was recording herself because she was bipolar or something. I never knew that. But it's and she would get worked up about nothing. She would just she came to my house once because I think it was July 4th. I didn't have to work that day. So I didn't get up at 4 o'clock and go home. And Shanann called me and I didn't hear it because I was sleeping. I was just and she was pissed. Shanann was pissed. And I called her outside, where are you at? What? I was I didn't have to work today. It's called me at 5:30. It's kids want to talk to you at 7:30. I'm I was sleeping. She's she just screw you, like, like, I don't know where you're at, and I went back inside, something like, I gotta go. And she was just like, okay, then you coming back? I'm like, probably not.
So wait a minute, you kind of lost me there. Were you at Nikki's place
Yeah.
when Shanann called you?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were sleeping in her bed.
Yeah, because I wasn't going to work that day, because I didn't have to that day. First holiday I ever had off. And, Shanann was pissed, and, kind of pissed Nikki off too that I left. But I think that's when I called Nikki later, and she was like, she kind of realized that, she'd always be like, the second, she said second fiddle.
Sure.
And because that's how I probably would come like that day. Just, I don't want to be anywhere else when Shanann calls. She was already pissed. So it was stuff like that where she would she would go, she said she would go on like websites and look at like, will a relationship work with somebody? Like, will a mistress work? Will a mistress try to do a relationship?
That's what Nikki was looking at?
Yeah.
She would tell you that, or you
told
heard
me
that?
that.
Okay.
Yeah, she said that she would go on websites and look at stuff like that. I was like, why do you even look at stuff like that? She's like, I just want to see what other people have experienced.
But so that confuses me though, because I thought earlier you were saying she thought you were heading toward a divorce. So why was she looking at herself as a mistress?
This was later on.
Oh.
Like,
Okay.
In August, like
Okay.
first week of August, when I told her, like, I had had that talk with her about separation.
Uh-huh.
That's when, like, she started looking at, like, apartments and stuff. But, like, during our July relationship type thing there,
Oh, I see.
that's when she was looking up, like, will it actually work? She told her friend Brittany about it, I guess, and Brittany told her not to do it, but she said she already made a decision.
Okay. And so, are those people absolutely wrong about Nikki? She wasn't asking you to get rid of your family?
No.
Are you sure? Okay. And no part of any of this was because she put it in your head or asked you to, or
You never. I mean, this whole relationship contributed to it,
sure.
but she didn't want me to.
I mean, was it ever like, I wish you didn't have kids. I want to have, kids of my own with you. Like,
She never knew if she wanted to have kids, but she said that, at one point she said, I'd like to give you a son.
Picture this: a concrete cell, maybe 8 feet by 10, metal bed bolted to the wall, thin mattress, toilet in the corner, no privacy, one small window, thick glass, bars, and silence. 23 hours a day, alone. Chris Watts wakes up in that cell every morning. Same walls, same ceiling, same concrete floor. According to sources familiar with his incarceration, his quality of life is extremely poor. That's the official language. Let me translate. He's trapped in a box with his thoughts. No escape, no distraction, no reprieve. Around the clock. Birthdays pass, holidays come and go. Weekends don't exist. Christmas looks exactly like Tuesday. New Year's looks exactly like Thursday. Nothing changes. The routine is designed this way. Wake up, eat breakfast through a slot in the door, stare at walls. Maybe 1 hour outside the cell, if behavior permits. Back inside, lunch through the slot. More walls, dinner through the slot. Sleep, repeat. Forever. Another source described it differently. There's nothing to distract him. No escape. Just time and memory. He thinks about what he did every single day. How could he not? When you're alone for 23 hours with nothing but your own mind, where do your thoughts go? They go to that night, to those moments, to the choices he made. And there's no running from it. No Netflix to zone out. No scrolling through phones. No conversations to lose yourself in. Just memory, playing on repeat. Some of you might be thinking, good. And I understand that reaction completely. But here's what makes this even worse for him. It's not just the isolation. It's who he's isolated from. Prison has rules, not the official ones. The other kind. The unspoken code that determines who you are and where you fit. At the top, inmates who committed crimes society fears but doesn't necessarily despise. Robbers, drug traffickers, some violent offenders. They have status, respect. They can move through the prison with relative safety. Then you go down the ladder. Lower-level offenders, white-collar criminals, people doing time for things that don't inspire rage. They exist somewhere in the middle. Below them, snitches, informants, people who cooperated with police. Prison culture hates them, But even they're not at the bottom. The absolute bottom, beneath everyone else, is reserved for one type of criminal, people who harmed children. That's where Chris Watts lives, every single day. Eddie Navarez, former inmate who understands prison culture, explained it bluntly. Many inmates would attack Watts if they had the chance. His exact words. Watts murdered 2 young children who had done nothing wrong. That places him at the absolute bottom of the prison hierarchy. Navarez continued. If correctional officers weren't constantly nearby, Watts would be assaulted repeatedly. That's not opinion. That's documented reality. Another expert described Watts as a target of opportunity. Meaning what? Meaning if an opening presents itself, if guards turn their backs for 30 seconds, if Watts is alone in the wrong place at the wrong time, someone will take that opportunity. Guaranteed. This isn't speculation. Watts knows this. He lives with that awareness every moment. He avoids common areas, keeps his head down, stays in his cell as much as possible, because the yard, the cafeteria, the hallways, those are danger zones, places where consequences happen. Why do inmates hate him so much? Here's the thing. Many of them are parents. They have children on the outside, daughters, sons, kids waiting for them to come home. And when they look at Chris Watts, they don't see a fellow inmate. They see someone who had what they desperately miss. A family, children who loved him, a wife, a home. And he destroyed it, deliberately, violently. That's unforgivable in prison culture. Worse than murder between adults. Worse than gang violence. Worse than almost anything else, because children represent innocence. And Watts killed innocence itself. So he moves through that prison knowing that at any moment, something could happen. Knowing guards may not reach him in time. Knowing that even if nothing happens today, tomorrow could be different. That constant threat, that awareness, it never stops. Day after day after day. Imagine living like that. Imagine waking up every morning wondering if today's the day someone gets to you. If today's the day a guard looks away. If today's the day you don't see it coming. That psychological pressure alone would break most people. And Watts, he's been living with it for years. You'd think someone in his position would follow every rule, stay invisible, avoid all attention, do everything perfectly to minimize risk. That's not what happened. Watts was disciplined multiple times for unauthorized communication, for unauthorized transfer of property. Translation: he was interacting with people he wasn't allowed to interact with, giving away items he wasn't permitted to share. Punishment: lost phone privileges for 15 days, lost access to the prison canteen for 30 days, no calls, no snacks, no small comforts. For someone living in extreme isolation, that's devastating. But it didn't stop there. He was cited again, this time for possessing contraband and for refusing to follow orders. That resulted in loss of electronic privileges for 10 more days. Then things took a strange turn. Mid-year, officers searched the cell of another inmate, Dylan Tallman. Inside, they found personal items belonging to Chris Watts, books, hygiene products, toiletries, personal clothing, petroleum jelly. When questioned, Watts admitted he'd given Tallman his belongings. Not just books, not just coffee or snacks, his toothbrush, his shampoo, his soap, his underwear, his personal effects. Think about that. You're giving another man your toothbrush, your underwear. That's not normal behavior, that's desperation. But it gets stranger. Watts had been making phone calls to Tallman's family. He contacted Tallman's mother multiple times. He also involved his own parents. Asked them to reach out to Tallman's mother and girlfriend. Why? Why would you do this? Here's what I think. Watts is isolated, completely. Cut off from all human connection, no social circle, no acceptance, no friends, no family visiting, nothing. How do you survive that mentally? Some people turn inward, shut down completely. Others, they'll do anything, give anything for even the smallest bit of human contact. And that's what this looks like. Watts was essentially paying for friendship, trading his belongings for the illusion of connection, creating complicated phone networks through other people's families just so he could feel like part of something. That's not the behavior of someone who's mentally stable. That's someone unraveling. Former inmates who interacted with him noticed other things too. In Bible study, Watts would make comments, small ones, about his case. Not openly, not dramatically, just subtle hints. If things had gone differently, if certain people had acted differently, if I had understood sooner, that word keeps appearing. If, as though his actions were reactions, as though responsibility rests partly elsewhere. One former inmate confronted him about this, about accountability, about owning your choices fully. Watts went quiet. Then he said something revealing. I take responsibility, but you have to understand the whole picture. The whole picture. That phrase appears in his letters too, over and over, as if there's missing context that would somehow change how people see what he did. But that's exactly what angers people. What context could possibly exist? What explanation makes strangling your daughters understandable? None. There is no context. There is no whole picture. There's only what he did. But he can't accept that, because fully accepting the weight of his actions, without excuses, without conditions, without explanations, might be something he simply cannot survive. So he creates narratives, reshapes the story, looks for external factors, anything to soften the reality. And that tells you everything about his mental state. Watts still writes letters, lots of them. Since the case came back into public attention, new documentaries, renewed interest. His mailbox has been fuller than it's been in years. Some messages are supportive, some are hostile, some are just curious. And he responds to many of them, still trying to maintain connection to the outside world, still wanting to be understood. His letters show something fascinating, a man struggling to live with himself, searching for explanations, for context, for some version of events where he's not entirely the villain. He brings up Shanann, carefully, not accusing her directly, but suggesting, hinting. Our relationship was complicated. There were pressures I couldn't talk about. If you knew everything, always leaving it vague, always implying there's more to the story. He talks about his childhood, his mother, the dynamics that shaped him. Again, not making excuses, just providing background, context, the whole picture. He mentions the affair, Nichol Kessinger, how that relationship made him feel alive, made him feel like himself for the first time, and then, always, he circles back. I'm not defending what I did. I take full responsibility. I live with this every day. But those statements ring hollow because they're always followed by more context, more explanations, more, but you have to understand. Real remorse doesn't need context. Real remorse says, I did this. It was wrong. There's no excuse. Period. Watts can't do that. He gets close, then pulls back, adds qualifiers, provides framework. It's like watching someone try to hold water in their hands. They get close to grasping something real, then it slips through. Over and over. Some people who've read his letters say he sounds genuinely tormented, that the guilt is eating him alive. Others say he's manipulative, still trying to control the narrative, still playing victim. I think it's both. I think he is tormented. But I also think he's psychologically incapable of facing the full truth without creating frameworks around it, because the full truth, unvarnished, uncontextualized, would shatter whatever fragile sense of self he's managed to maintain. And in isolation, 23 hours a day, for years, that fragile sense of self is all he has. Here's what prolonged isolation does to the human brain. It's not theoretical. We have decades of research on this. Studies on solitary confinement, on extreme isolation, on what happens when you remove human contact for extended periods. The effects are devastating. Hallucinations. People start seeing things that aren't there, hearing voices, conversations that don't exist. Paranoia develops. Everyone becomes a threat. Every sound has meaning. Trust evaporates completely. Severe anxiety and depression, not the kind you experience in normal life. The kind that makes you unable to function, unable to regulate emotions, unable to process reality correctly, loss of impulse, control. Things you'd never normally do suddenly seem reasonable, giving away your toothbrush, calling strangers' families, creating elaborate schemes just to hear another human voice. That's impulse control breaking down, cognitive decline, memory problems, difficulty concentrating, inability to think clearly. Your brain literally begins to atrophy. Neural pathways that aren't used start to fade. Social processing capabilities deteriorate. The United Nations considers prolonged solitary confinement torture, not punishment, torture, because it fundamentally damages human psychology. And Watts, he's been living in these conditions for over 6 years, 8,000 consecutive days of isolation. His brain isn't functioning normally anymore. It can't. The giving away of personal items to Dylan Tallman, that's not just loneliness. That's someone whose sense of normal boundaries has completely eroded, whose understanding of appropriate social behavior has broken down. The phone calls to strangers' families, that's not strategic. That's desperate, fractured thinking. Someone creating Byzantine schemes because linear thought has become difficult. The constant reframing of his narrative in letters. That might not be manipulation. That might be someone whose grip on objective reality is slipping, whose brain is creating alternate versions of events because holding the true version has become psychologically impossible. I'm not saying this to excuse him. I'm saying this to describe what's actually happening. His mind is breaking, piece by piece, day by day. Some former inmates who knew him early in his sentence and saw him later reported changes. He talks to himself now, mumbles. Sometimes, mid-conversation, he'll lose track of what he was saying. Just stop, stare into space, then try to pick back up like nothing happened. His hygiene has declined, not dramatically, but enough that people notice. Someone who used to be meticulous about appearance now sometimes looks disheveled, doesn't always shower when he could, doesn't always maintain himself. That's classic depression, but it's also cognitive decline. When your brain isn't functioning properly, even basic self-care becomes difficult. His sleep is reportedly terrible. Guards doing rounds at night sometimes see him awake, just sitting on his bed, staring at walls. 3 in the morning, 4, 5, not reading. Not doing anything, just sitting. That's not insomnia. That's someone whose circadian rhythms have been destroyed by lack of environmental stimulation, whose brain can't differentiate between day and night anymore. The Bible study sessions he still attends, but participants say he seems distant, like he's there physically, but somewhere else mentally. He'll quote scripture, but sometimes it doesn't quite fit the conversation. Like he's pulling from memorized passages without fully processing context. That's another sign. When people start relying heavily on memorized material, repeated phrases, stock responses, it often means original thought is becoming difficult. This isn't about whether he deserves sympathy. This is about observing clinical deterioration. And here's the uncomfortable question nobody wants to ask. What happens when he deteriorates further? Because this doesn't plateau. It gets worse, always worse. The longer the isolation continues, the more severe the psychological damage. Eventually, and we're talking years, maybe decades from now, he'll likely reach a point where he's barely functional, unable to carry conversations, unable to process information, possibly experiencing full psychotic breaks, complete detachment from reality. And he'll still be in that cell, still serving 5 life sentences. Still there when his mind is completely gone. What are we punishing at that point? This starts earlier than you think. Long before that night in August, Chris Watts didn't become a family annihilator overnight. Something shaped him, or failed to shape him. The first problem appears here, his relationship with his mother, Cindy Watts. By multiple accounts, she had significant issues with Shanann, didn't approve of the marriage, questioned Shanann's parenting, challenged her health issues, created constant tension. Family gatherings became battlegrounds. Holidays were stressful. Every visit involved conflict. And Chris, he never set boundaries, never told his mother to back off, never defended his wife. He tried to please everyone, keep everyone happy, avoid all confrontation. That's how he was raised. Be agreeable, don't make waves, smile, nod, keep the peace. Even when peace requires sacrificing yourself, Shanann would get upset, rightfully, about his mother's behavior, and Chris would just shut down, not fight back, not support her, just retreat inward, promise to handle it later, never handle it. This created a marriage where Shanann felt alone, like she was fighting his family by herself, while Chris played Switzerland, neutral, passive, ineffective. That passivity, that's crucial. Because when things got hard, when the marriage struggled, when finances stressed, when life became overwhelming, Chris didn't know how to address problems directly. He'd been trained his entire life to avoid conflict, to smile through discomfort, to never assert himself. So instead of communicating with Shanann, he withdrew. Instead of couples therapy, he started an affair. Instead of divorce, he chose murder. That's not a natural progression. That's someone so psychologically stunted, so incapable of direct action, that extreme escape became the only solution he could conceive. His family dynamics created this, not caused his crimes. Caused him, the weak, passive, conflict-avoidant person who couldn't handle adult problems. And when you can't handle adult problems through adult means, you regress. You look for the most primitive solution, elimination. Make the problem disappear. Now here's the really interesting part. After the murders, after the confession, after the conviction, his parents defended him initially, publicly, in interviews. Cindy Watts suggested Shanann might have killed the children, that Chris only killed Shanann in retaliation. An unbelievable claim, completely contradicted by evidence, by his own confession. But she said it anyway. A mother protecting her son, even when protection means denying reality. But eventually, something changed. Because now, they don't visit. They don't appear on his visitor logs. They're not there. That rejection is significant. Maybe they finally recognized what he truly did. Maybe they feel guilt about their role in creating the dysfunction. Maybe they simply can't face what their son became. Or maybe, and this is darker, maybe they blame him for embarrassing them, for bringing shame on the family, for ruining their lives by association. That would be very on-brand for people who care more about appearances than substance. Either way, Chris Watts sits in that cell, alone, without his mother's support, without his father's visits, without his sister's letters. The family that helped create his inability to cope has abandoned him entirely, and in some tragic way, that abandonment mirrors the abandonment he inflicted. He destroyed his family. Now his family has destroyed him, not through violence, through absence, through silence, through the same passive withdrawal he learned so well. So here we are, years into his life sentences. The question everyone asks, has prison changed Chris Watts? Official records say yes. He's described as a model inmate, follows rules, does assigned work, participates in programs, avoids major disciplinary trouble. By institutional standards, he's doing everything right. But whether that means he's changed as a person, that's far more complicated. He still cleans floors for pennies an hour, mopping the same hallways, day after day. That's his job. That's his contribution. He still spends most of his day locked in a cell. Same routine, same walls, same isolation. He still writes letters, still tries to explain, still provides context. He still attends Bible study, quotes scripture, talks about forgiveness, redemption, grace. Whether he truly understands those concepts or just recites them is unclear. His routine hasn't fundamentally changed since arrival. Wake up, clean, isolation, sleep, repeat. The same small cell, the same bland meals, the same crushing loneliness. What has changed recently? Attention, new documentaries, renewed public interest, the case trending again. And with that, more letters. His mailbox fuller than it's been in years. Some supportive, some hostile, some curious. And he responds to many. Still seeking connection, still wanting to be understood, still trying to matter to someone. But one thing has not changed at all. 0 visitors, no relatives traveling to Wisconsin, no familiar faces in the visiting room, no one showing up just to see him, just letters, occasional phone calls, long stretches of silence. That isolation is complete and permanent. He will likely spend the next several decades living this exact routine. Same facility, same cell, same isolation, until the day he dies. And when that day comes, it probably won't make headlines, just a brief notice. Another inmate passing away in prison, another life ending behind concrete walls. Nobody will care, no mourners, no memorial service, no flowers, just a body, a number, a closed file. So has he changed? Some will say yes, that years of reflection, faith, and isolation have transformed him, that the person he is now isn't the man who committed those crimes. Others will say no. That certain acts cross a line where real change becomes impossible. That saying you're different doesn't make it true.
When
that
I was
he
negative
simply
and
learned how to survive prison
I
life.
lived and breathed
Nothing
negativity.
more. And maybe
it showed
the
on my
truth sits
family,
somewhere
it showed
between.
on my children, it showed
maybe
on
parts
myself.
of him have changed, while others haven't. Maybe
shows.
some remorse
Like,
is
it
genuine,
really, truly shows.
while other parts still don't fully grasp the damage. Maybe his mind has deteriorated so much that change isn't even the right word anymore. Maybe he's not the same person because his brain literally doesn't function the same way, because isolation has rewired his neural pathways, because trauma, even self-inflicted trauma, alters human psychology. What is certain is this: every morning he wakes up in that cell. Every night he goes to sleep knowing he'll never leave. Every day looks exactly like the one before and the one that follows. That is his reality. That is his life. That is what justice looks like for him. Whether it's enough, whether it's too much, whether it serves any purpose beyond punishment, those are questions each of us has to answer for ourselves. I can tell you what I see: a man whose mind is breaking, who trades toothbrushes for friendship, who calls strangers because loneliness has become unbearable, who quotes scripture while mentally deteriorating, who sits in a cell thinking about what he did every single day for the rest of his life. Some of you feel that's appropriate. Some of you feel it's not enough. Some of you feel it's too much. All of those reactions are valid because this isn't simple. Justice never is. Punishment never is. What do we owe someone who destroyed everything? What do we owe the victims? What do we owe ourselves as a society? I don't have those answers. I just know this. Shanann Watts is gone. Bella Watts is gone. Celeste Watts is gone. Baby Nico is gone. 4 lives erased. Families shattered. Communities traumatized. And the man who did it sits in a concrete box, losing his mind, slowly, painfully, completely. If you stayed with me through this, thank you. If this made you think, made you question, made you uncomfortable, good. That's the point. These stories should make us uncomfortable. They should force us to confront difficult questions about justice, about punishment, about what we're willing to accept as a society. Leave a comment below. Has prison changed him? Does it matter if it has? Should we care what happens to people once they're locked away forever? I want to hear your thoughts. Subscribe for more investigations, more difficult questions, more uncomfortable truths. This isn't about glorifying what happened. It's about understanding the before, the during, the after. Because that's how we learn. That's how we try to make sense of things that feel impossible to understand. Until next time, never forget the real victims, the innocent ones who can no longer tell their own stories.